Hey friends, Pastor Michael from Organic Church, here with Sydney Erickson, Pastor Holly Daisy, Nick Offolter, Pastor Roger Deerdorf. So Nick, we're kicking it straight to you tonight, because this is your topic, your life experience, so you get to start us.
Lucky me.
I know.
Okay. All right, yeah, so we thought we would talk about being a Christian. How do you deal with difficult situations, particularly difficult people, if you're having a situation where, you have to go beyond maybe normal, friendly conversation with somebody in order to get something done. You have to go to the next level. And I'll kind of explain myself a little bit to start off. Since I was young, I've been very influenced by males of the 19th century. And during that time, it was considered unmanly if you lost your temper. Like, they had things back then called virtues. And there's just, if you were going to be a man, you're going to be a gentleman, there's certain things that you didn't do. Mm-hmm. And one was you always wanted to have self-control. You never wanted to lose your temper. If you did, you were looked down upon.
How the times have changed.
Yeah.
We were just talking
and now it's like, if you don't lose your temper, if you're not really, stern with somebody,
you're not a man.
Then you're not a man. Yeah. So it's really changed. But I was, I've always been influenced by that. And so I've kind of, always tried to do that within myself, to have self-control and never to lose my temper, which I had a bad temper when I was younger. Like, if I watched a football game, my favorite team, and they were losing, I'd be upset, screaming.
You should have heard me Monday.
Yeah, I bet you were. Yeah, that's awful.
Hard week to be a Browns fan.
Yeah, it was. Yeah. But yeah, I'd almost be the point of tears if my team was losing. So, like I said, it's one thing that I've always tried to do is, I never profited much from the example of yelling at people to try to get what I want done. Mm-hmm. I've seen that example. Maybe it works for some people, but it's never worked for me. Mm-hmm. So
it works for people who can pay people a lot of money. Like, if I paid you $1 million a year, I could probably yell at you and you would take it.
Yeah.
Right.
But if I pay you $15 an hour, I'm not going to be able to yell at you for very long before you're just sick of it. Mm-hmm. That's life in general.
Mm-hmm. For sure.
Right.
I'll put up with a certain amount of crap for being paid a certain amount of money. Right. So, okay. Sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah. And, George Washington, he had a whole, and what a lot of these guys would do is they would actually write out all these, what they called maxims, which were kind of like advice for life, how to be a gentleman, how to be a man. And it would just be like a list of, hundreds of topics of advice, and always having firm self-control was always one of the top ones. So, like I said, I just kind of build upon that, and that's how I choose to handle things. And a lot of those maxims and those rules of civility came out of Christian character, out of Christian beliefs, from what they learned in the church, and just, how to grow, stuff like that. So, so just following that from an early age is something I always tried to build on and tried to emulate. But I had a situation a couple weeks ago at work, where, I've been working with this guy for at least 3 years, worked really close with him. And it was always a really great working relationship. He respected me. He always, he did a really great job, always followed through on all his tasks. And then all of a sudden, it was like something had changed. Like, all of a sudden, his attitude started to change. You could tell he wasn't invested anymore in what we were doing. He certainly, I just knew something was different, but, not coming right out and ask. And there's a lot of other, I'm not going to go into everything, but from my perspective, it was, okay, I know this relationship has changed. I don't know why.
Yeah.
But now it's like, when I tell him to do something, when I give him a task, it doesn't get done as quickly as it used to. He's not showing the same initiative as he used to when I give him a task.
Right.
Did you listen to the Andy Stanley video I sent you?
No, I think I missed
You've got to go listen to those.
Okay.
Because what you're saying to me right now is like, it's in those videos, man.
Okay.
Like they're fantastic. I'm not a big Andy Stanley fan in the fact that they're like he's done and said some things that are a little questionable to me. But from a leadership standpoint, he addresses what a good leader does in those situations is he would have walked straight up to that person and said, you're not what I'm expecting of you. You're not delivering to me. So I want to know why, and talks to them directly. I mean, it's mind blowing the world of difference that makes. Not that I'm saying you should have done that. All I'm saying is that like when you say that, my manager mind starts to run 100 miles an hour. Like,
Yeah.
what would I have done in that situation?
Yeah.
But don't worry, I'll share my story tonight. That's even going to make me look like an idiot.
Well, and to make this part of it short, what I realized was happening is he didn't want to have the job of a delivery driver anymore. He wanted to move on to welding. Well, news to me. Like,
Yeah.
he didn't tell me like, hey, I know I'm a driver, but
Right.
this is what I really want to do. So I'm really going to try to make every attempt to, see if I can,
Yeah.
switch. Well, there wasn't any of that. But it was pretty much he had integrated himself into a new job, and somehow it was just allowed to happen. And meanwhile, nobody tells me anything. So I have no clue what's going on or, how I'm supposed to deal with this. So, like I said, I give him a task. It doesn't get done. It's taking later and later. And of course, the first thing I'm trying to do is to give the guy the benefit of the doubt. Because like I said, we've always had a great working relationship, and I'm not sure who's at fault. But it kind of kept going on. And so it was just kind of repetitive problem. And at this point, I gave him another task. And here it goes. It's all morning. It hasn't been done. Now we're going into the afternoon. It's still not done. And I'm looking down there and I'm seeing like, yep, nothing's happening. Like I said, trying to give him every benefit of the doubt. And eventually, like, at that point, I just knew, like, okay, you're doing everything possible not to do this.
Right.
And for some reason, also, everybody else above me who's in management isn't doing anything about it either.
Yeah.
So I'm really stuck because now it's affecting my job.
Right.
I can't get things done.
If he's not doing that.
Right. Yeah. If he doesn't do his job, I can't accomplish what I need to do. So, and the one thing I don't want to have happen is somebody say, hey, why didn't we make that delivery on time? What happened? I don't want to
You're responsible.
reflect upon me. I'm
Yeah.
responsible.
Yeah.
So, yeah, one of the few times that I lost my temper. And of course, I went down there and I said, I don't know what the problem is. I said, I don't know if something's changed. I said, but it's obvious that, you don't want to do this job. I said, so I don't know if you have a grief with somebody. I said, I don't know what the situation is, but you need to figure it out now. I said, because it's starting to affect my job.
Yeah.
And of course, everybody else is standing there. So it's not even like I took, because I know that rule too. Most of the time, if I really had something to say to somebody, I would take them aside.
Yeah.
And have that conversation, which I've done plenty of times. But this was one of those, 2 times in my life where it just, it got to me.
Yeah.
And I went down there and I, yelled in front of everybody that was standing there, made my point, and walked away. And the situation did improve because then, of course, it got back to, the people in upper management,
Right.
Because they all heard about it because
Yeah.
everybody's talking about it now. Like, because I'm sure they're like, can you believe Nick lost his temper? It's just not like him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think I even apologized to him in the moment by saying, I really don't want to yell at you. And I said, we've had this great working relationship. So I said, I don't know what's going on, but somebody really needs to tell me.
Right.
We need to get this straightened out. So, of course, when I walked away from that, once I had a couple hours, I finally come down.
Settled down.
And that's the thing with me. I know if I lose my temper, I can't just come back
Yeah.
down.
Your
It's
blood
over.
pressure's pumping,
Yeah.
your ears get hot.
Yeah, I can't focus. I mean, it's over. So that's another reason always to keep self-control, because once I reach that point, it's like, well, now I lose it all. I can't focus, can't do my job. It really affects me. So I instantly felt like, okay, from a Christian standpoint, from everything that I've tried to emulate, everything I've tried to learn, I did the wrong thing. Like I said, even though I know it did have a result, it did kind of, it hasn't completely solved the situation, but at least it brought it to a head and kind of brought back things a little bit to how it used to be. But yeah, I instantly felt like I did something wrong. And so that's when the question came to mind is, okay, you know, being Christians, how do you deal? Because there's just times in life where you're going to meet that situation where maybe it takes, you know, getting fired up and yelling at that person, you know, and really taking a stand for something. And I think I mentioned before last week, I said, as Christians, does that mean we're always supposed to be passive? You know, because sometimes that's how I feel. It's like I'm not being Christian if I do lose my temper with somebody. If I'm not, you know, handling something in a friendly manner. You know, if I have to go beyond telling somebody to do their job, if I have to demand somebody do their job, you know, then how do you deal with that being a Christian?
There's a difference in being direct and being mean.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm a very direct person, and everybody thinks I'm mean. I'm not mean. I'm just like, this is what I expect of you, and I want that to be understood up front. And so I think that the struggle in those situations, so I will say this about myself. Being a pastor, but being bivocational is a blessing for me. Because if you guys had to put up with me 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, you would all be crazy. Like, Roger is already on the brink of like dealing with me as much as he has, because there's a certain level of like drive to get things accomplished. I am not, so if you look at my disc profile, I'm not a high D, but D falls into the mix, okay? I am actually more of a relational person, and I would rather sit and be able to chat with people all day long rather than like perform a task or accomplish a task. I don't care if the task gets done as long as the people doing the task are happy, healthy, and doing it well. That's more of my drive. So when I say to you, this is what I expect, he's being awful mean. No, I'm setting boundaries.
Yeah.
I need you to understand that this is the expectation. And so I yell a lot. I don't yell at people though. I yell in general, like, this is stupid.
At the circumstance.
Yes, right. I don't, it would be an inherent difference to me also when somebody is like, if somebody's standing over in the corner and they're swearing, okay, they're swearing. It's whatever. But if they start swearing at me, we've got a problem.
Yeah.
Things have changed. The situation has changed. But I don't often yell at people. But the way I approach it whenever I have a situation like that with somebody who maybe isn't a Christian, I always start with the same thing. Hey, thanks for taking time to meet with me. And then I talk through what it is that I want. I'm very direct. I don't want to waste your time. I don't want you wasting my, don't give me excuses. Don't below the line answer me. Just tell me I messed up, or I want to be a welder and not a driver anymore. And you aren't giving me the opportunity to be a welder. And I'm going to say, you're right. I'm not. Yeah. And here's the reason that I'm not.
Right.
Number one being I didn't know you wanted to be a welder. So let's start with that. And number two, your performance hasn't shown me that you're ready to make a change.
Yeah.
So let's be honest with each other. Let's have upfront conversations. And I believe in what in the professional lingo is upfront contracts. So when I hire you or I meet with you for the first time for a project, I tell you exactly what it is that you will experience working with me. I tell you that I will give you the list of tasks. I don't care how you get the tasks done. I don't like surprises, and don't ever leave me out of the loop.
Yeah.
Right.
So if I find out that you've called my boss and told my boss something before you've told me, we have a problem now. And I'm not mad at you for it, but we've got a problem because the communication hasn't been clear. And
communication is huge.
It is the most important part of any working relationship that you will have outside of the church.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But the most important thing that you will have inside of a church is trust. Always. I like people. People get frustrated with me because I don't often hand off. I don't trust people with a lot of stuff, but I don't because we've experienced really terrible situations when we hand stuff off.
Right. Right.
I mean, I can list probably 10 times that we've handed something to somebody and gotten burned on the backside. And it's not that I won't ever trust anybody with that again, but it comes in seasons. It comes with like, hey, like I know there are only a handful of people with keys to this building. Somebody asked for a kitchen door code today, and they thought we were just going to give them like the general door code, and I was like, no, we're going to put one in for them. And the reason is that Holly's experienced this, Roger has experienced this. Stuff just walks away. I need to be able to know who's in and out of those spaces. Now, if I find out that you're stealing from the church, we're going to have a much bigger problem. But I don't believe that this person was going to do that. But the minute I give that door code, then that door code gets shared with everybody, and now we have zero control again. When I took over this church, I would guess somewhere in the 40% of Tuscarawas County had a key to this building.
Really?
At least.
Wow.
I mean, there were people they would find out I was pastoring here. Oh, you know what? I've still got a key to your building. And they thought it was funny. And I was like, that can't be possible. There are 13 keys to this building now. That's it. That's all that will ever exist. 13 keys. And I know who has every one of them.
They're all not. They're all
numbered. They're all accounted for.
They're not out either.
No. Majority of them are in my desk drawer. I think there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in existence that are six that are handed out right now. And there's a reason for that. Because I put a lockbox on the front of the building. And so if you need in once or twice, I can put a code into the door. You can get in, get what you need, do what you need to do, put the key back, out you go. Right? There's no need for half the county to have a key to the building.
Right.
And so trust is important, but you can't just blanket that word and just like, I'm going to trust everybody with everything until you know that they are trustworthy.
Right. Yeah.
So I don't want to get into the Andy Stanley thing, but if you listen to it, you know where I'm going with that. But seriously, so I think that if we can, what I try to do is I try to take that same motivation into the workplace with me. And I try to trust as many people as I can with as much as I can. But again, it doesn't come easy. And once you've broken that trust, it's really hard to gain it back.
Oh, yeah.
Really hard to gain it back. So dealing with difficult people for me is always looking at them and saying, I don't agree with what you're doing. I understand that it's emotionally motivated, but I'm a logical person. And so I don't understand your emotion. I actually said to a girl one time, I went into a meeting with her. She's crying, sobbing, like uncontrollably sobbing. And I looked at her and I said, you can turn off the waterworks because the conversation we're having is not emotional. It's logical. You haven't met, and we need to figure out why.
Yeah.
You're like the Terminator.
I just...
Why do you cry?
Yeah, why do you cry? I've always...
pain caused it.
I've always been that way, but I'm always upfront with people about that. And my wife said to me the other day, her and I were having a conversation about how direct I can be and how people take that as me being mean. And she said, but you've always been that way and you're always honest with people about it. You always tell everybody, this is how I operate. And so what's funny though, is I don't refresh people's memory enough to say, I really am not trying to be mean, and I'm not trying to cover up being mean. I'm just saying that it's the truth, and I'm not changing that for sake of who I am as a person.
Yeah.
I want to get stuff done, not watch other people get stuff done.
Yeah.
I want to see us accomplish tasks for the betterment of the kingdom, not just because. So.
Yeah, you shouldn't have to change your personality to please them.
We talked about that whenever I got the word about giving up childish things. You know, we stand in the pulpit every Sunday and we tell jokes. If I give that up, I'm not who I am, who I naturally am. Do you know what I mean? Now, there are some things that I took that, I'm like, okay, I get that now. I see what they were talking about. But I took that as a blanket statement for everything fun in my life has to be gone, and I have to be this elevated person, and I'm never going to be that. Let's be honest. It's not going to happen. So we can't expect that from other people. Which brings me to my second point. Stop expecting you out of other people.
That's hard.
Someone just told me
because I work on momentum, initiative, and
Yeah.
communication, and I expect everyone. I can't understand why anybody would want to do it any other way.
Right,
That's my
right.
problem.
Yes. No, I agree with you. I run on coffee and granola bars all day long. I don't stop and eat. I don't take a break. I don't if I can get a cup of coffee as I run by the machine, that's how I'll do it rather than stop. Okay.
Yeah.
And I expect everybody to work at that level. I have an owner who is the same way. Very my way is the best way and everybody should just do it my way because that's the best way to do it. It doesn't make sense to do any other way. And he was working a desk shift the other day and he's answering the phone and he's cross-selling products and he's, hey, good morning, how are you? And he's doing this whole bit. It's like this whole song and dance. And I thought he could not sustain that momentum for an 8-hour shift. If he had to do that 5 days in a row, he would lose his mind. Now he's naturally excitable. So he would enjoy it to a certain degree, but it is not sustainable, right? So, but he expects everybody to maintain that energy 5 days a week, 40 hours a week, 52 weeks a year. That's the level he wants you at. It's not realistic. And when we expect that out of other people, we will inevitably be disappointed.
Right.
Lots of people disappoint me because they aren't me. Right?
Did we say that last week?
Maybe.
And you want to lead. See, my other thing is always think, well, I'm leading by example. If people see me working that way, completing tasks the way I do, treating people the way I do, communicating, all of those things, people will follow.
Nope.
No, they
And
won't.
some do, but most no.
And the some
They
that
don't.
do, the some that do have a drive to accomplish
Yeah.
and or move to a new level.
Right. Yeah.
The
They
ones-
want to elevate themselves.
Right.
I went to a place yesterday. Oh, I'm going to tell a story. Can I tell a story? Irrelevant story, but I have to tell it on the podcast because everybody in the world needs to hear this.
You've been in Belgium.
Okay.
Belgium, this
Listen
is
out,
coming to
Belgium.
you. Okay, last night, Alyssa and I went to that new steakhouse in Philly. What's the name of it?
Oh, where it was.
Where Lambs used
Where
to
Lambs
Yes.
used to be.
be. I don't know.
Okay.
I love that place.
Okay.
We've only had it once,
So,
so very good.
12-ounce steak. Was not expecting the steak that came to the table. This steak was huge. Okay, lay it on the table. Take the first bite. I start choking on my steak. Like legitimately choking on the steak. I didn't know what to do.
Because
I don't like part of it like I swallowed and it
Okay.
went up instead of down. I don't know what happened, but I was like legitimately choking on the
Can't
steak.
breathe.
Well, I didn't know
and
if it was
breathe
bad.
and
You didn't-
swallow
No,
at
the
same
steak was
time.
delicious. The steak was delicious, but it did ruin it for me. I did not finish the steak. I took like 3 more bites and I'm like, can't do it. I couldn't talk and I was panicking. Like I was starting to panic. And so I grabbed the napkin and I'm trying to get this thing out of my mouth without making a scene. And my wife says, knock it off. Like I'm legit. And so I finally get it up and I'm like, did you just tell me enough? I was choking.
As I'm dying.
And she's like, oh, I thought you were just like being dramatic. I'm like, what?
Huh, she knows you very
So
well.
I was gonna say, and she told me, she said, when you eat something that doesn't taste good, that's how you act.
Yep,
And so
yep.
I wasn't gonna let you sit there and act dumb. So anyhow,
and that nice restaurant.
yes, everybody's heard the story now. My wife will know that it's out there in the world. I told her I'm telling it on Sunday too. I'm so mad at her for that. I talked about it all day today. Can't believe
you
you
just
told.
couldn't leave it go, could you?
Nope, couldn't leave it go. Couldn't leave it go. What was I saying before that?
I don't know how it had anything to do with that.
Yeah.
It didn't have anything to
I'm
do with
trying
that.
to rail you back in,
Yeah.
and I'm like, I don't remember.
Yeah.
well, we were talking about how if you expect other people to
Follow your
follow
example.
you, follow your
Mm.
example.
You expected Alyssa to follow you?
No. I expected Alyssa to not let me die, but apparently that wasn't going to happen.
I feel like you were at a good point.
I
too.
was. I'm sure I was.
You went off on a tangent.
Yeah, I couldn't help it. Sorry.
Yeah.
It popped
It'll
in my
come to
mind, and
you.
I knew if I didn't tell it then, I wouldn't tell it at all.
Well, I think if we go back to where you talked about being under self-control, that's a fruit of the Spirit, in Galatians 5:22, and those fruits are developed.
Yes.
God didn't say, "Oh, you're naturally going to love everybody
Yeah, right.
and forgive everybody," and "Oh, you're just going to be so kind." No, He didn't do that. He said, "These are gifts that you're going to develop," and I think self-control, which also they say patience,
Uh-huh.
but self-control is a major gift to develop.
Yeah.
Because in our eating and our attitude and our disposition,
Yeah.
our raising our children, driving a car, we need to have self-control. What if everybody hopped in their car and took off and was flipping everybody off and not
Well,
watching the lights? And that could get bad.
Last week, I was as close to an accident as I've ever been. We're getting towards the Sugar Creek exit. I'm heading south going home. And, they've been doing a lot of construction up there.
yeah.
So, and everybody just drives, most
In and
times
out,
just
in and
crazy,
out,
in
yep.
and out, in
Yeah.
and out.
Yep.
Well, this car right behind me, they accelerate and they try to cut it right in front of this semi. And I'm looking back going, you're not going to do that.
Yeah.
Like I could see it happening already. And I'm pretty much like, no. And they go right over. And of course, they did not clear that semi. And it clipped, the back end clipped the front of that semi and it spun them to the other side of the highway.
That's crazy.
And yeah, I've never been that close to an accident. But it's like now with a little self-control, instead of trying to,
Leave 10
hurry,
minutes
have-
earlier.
Right.
Have some patience.
know.
Leave 10 minutes earlier. I don't get it.
I always say on my way to work, nobody knows but me. But, I'm just like, okay, go ahead, be the leader. I don't
Yeah.
care. I just fall back
Yeah.
behind. I don't care.
But-
But they're just like, pew,
Yep.
pew.
And then you get off the exit
And they're all
7
sitting at the
minutes
red
later,
light?
and they're
Yeah.
right in front
Yeah.
of you. Oh yeah, you went real
It wasn't
far.
even like they were in danger or had
Yeah.
to try to get over. I mean,
They're
they
just
just
in a
wanted
hurry.
to be in front of that semi and
Yeah.
just thought,
Mhm.
maybe.
So I agree with you. Those are all like it's a fruit that you develop. It's not, most of it is not natural. One of the things that I did not get naturally but had to learn is discernment. And so I think that's another great way of dealing with difficult people. Discerning whether or not, are they mad at you or are they mad at a situation? Are they upset with something that you've done or something that a situation that you happen to be involved in? And I think when you can do that, when you can take the self out of it and it can be about a situation,
Yeah.
it's a lot healthier for you, healthier for them. And you don't ever feel like you have to defend yourself or defend your position. So
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have a somebody that I know, and they can walk into the room and set the whole attitude.
they are a thermostat.
Definitely.
I am a thermostat.
Well, that thermostat is usually on about 115.
Yeah. It's not a good thermostat. Yeah.
It's hard to approach that
Yes.
person.
Yeah.
Right.
Like even in the mornings, it's hard to be like, well,
Right.
hi, good morning, because you don't know if you're going to get one back.
Yeah.
So with my personality, I tend to lack back
Yeah.
and not say anything. But I've decided to push in.
Yeah.
And to be like, well, good morning, how are you? Or how's your morning going? And then that they actually have to address me.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
That's perfect. That is perfect. Because once you can't ignore me.
Yeah.
If I say good morning, you can ignore good
Right.
morning.
Right.
If I say, hey, good morning, how are you? Two things happen. It kicks into their mind that you care about them. Whether you do or you don't is irrelevant. They there's that
Yeah. They're
part
like,
of their
oh, they're
mind
asking
starts to
about me.
process and even if they turn around and say garbage, hey, I'll tell you what, you're not having a good day, but I'm gonna pray for you, or I'm gonna share my smile with you because I want you to have a good day. Like those are the types of things that it changes attitudes. Yes, I love that.
Yeah.
Like at work, my boss always says, "Nice smile, Holly."
Yeah.
He said, "We need that around here."
Yep.
And
But you work in a garage full of truck drivers and mechanics, and most of them are walking around spitting on the floor, and they're
They
not
say good morning, and they're like, if you say so.
Yeah,
right,
yeah.
right.
Yeah.
All right.
How you doing? Living the dream.
Yeah.
Yeah. Same cookie cutter answer.
Yeah,
Same cookie
right.
cutter. I have a guy that I call on the phone. I don't call him regularly, but enough to know exactly what he's going to say. And I'm like, hey, how are you? Oh, better than I should be. Like, same answer every single time. Now, he's an entertainer.
Oh.
And so he can do that on stage because he's typically not seeing the same crowd night after night. But when
Yeah.
you're a friend of his
Right.
and you're talking, you're like,
Yes.
oh my gosh, get new material, man.
I tell my father-in-law is I'm like, here's another one. Here's another one.
Can almost write the conversation
Yeah.
word for word.
Oh, poor Chase. He's got so many. I think he's been working with him 11 years now, and he's like, I had to hear this story 80th time today.
As long as he doesn't pick up his traits, why?
That's what I
you'll
keep
be
telling
all
him.
right.
Yeah, right.
The other just point that I would, and again, so I take my professional life into account when I'm talking about these things because I carry my pastoral part into my day job with me. I always look at the situation, and so we're having, let's say, that exact situation where you're just not performing and I'm getting frustrated. I will stop before I walk into the meeting or the conversation I'm going to have with that person, and I say, okay, but what am I not giving them that they may need? Instead of accusing them of not doing their job, am I not giving them something that they need to do their job? Now, if I can say with 100% confidence that I have done everything in my power to equip them with the tools that they need to do their job, then I'm going to walk into this meeting and I'm going to tear somebody's head off.
And that's why I said I was giving them every benefit of the
Right.
doubt, doing just that, thinking, okay, is there anything that I've done to cause this situation?
And when I say tear their head off, I don't obviously really mean that. I wouldn't have many people working for me, but I walk in and I'm very direct. Like, hey, there's a gap, and we need to figure this out because I can't continue to do your job and my job.
Right.
I need you to pick up this so that I can continue to handle that.
It sounds familiar. I used to have to do that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And here's the crazy part, though, for you is you weren't a supervisor.
No, but I had to do part of his work.
But you were genuinely dealing with a difficult person day in and day out. So when you can equip yourself with just that little tool of being able to say, hey, have I done everything in my power? Have I looked at everything that I've offered them and said, this is definitely what they need in order to get their part done?
And then they look at you and say, well, you didn't do this. You know, I did everything but get on the telephone.
I've done everything except for your job, your part.
Yeah.
It is difficult. It is difficult.
But like Holly said, you know, was basically giving them grace. You know, I had a person that I had a lot of difficult times with, and I think it was a message that you had on a Sunday or something, and I thought, well, I'm going to try this just to see if things change, and that's very hard to give them grace from their past.
Wait, you skipped an important part of your story. You took what I said in the message and you applied it to your life. Did it work or not?
It made me feel better.
Life-changing experience in Organic Church, ladies and gentlemen. There it is.
Seriously.
I just wanted the commercial. I just wanted the clip.
Seriously. Because, I felt, well, okay, I'm giving him grace.
He doesn't even know it.
Right.
Most of the time, they don't even know it.
And, and I would be very cordial with him. When I needed something, I would be very, before I'd say I'm going to give it, I need this and I need it now.
Yeah.
Right.
And which I did, but like I said, it made me feel better.
Yeah.
That I was treating him better.
Well, that's the being a Christian part.
Right.
Just because they're a difficult person doesn't mean I have to be an angry person.
Right.
I can learn to deal with them. And again, not in a passive way. I'm going to be direct. I'm going to give you what you need. My term is firm, fair, and friendly. I'm going to be firm. This is what I need. I'm going to be fair and say, hey, you can't get that today. That's okay. And I'm going to be friendly every time we interact. Never, never, ever, ever, ever with me assume that means weakness. Because you'll learn very quickly that it doesn't. Because what will happen is you'll continue to leave a gap that I have to fill with trust, and eventually you've broken that trust so many times. I'm like, okay, this isn't working.
Right.
And so we go then to the Christian friends conversation, and I'm like, I don't want this in my life.
Yeah.
Well, Pastor Michael doesn't talk to me like he used to. He doesn't call me on the phone like he used to. Right. It's because I know that I can't trust you.
Yeah.
It's because I lost my phone.
Now, I just want to point out that Roger said that about himself, and it was not me picking on him. Okay?
I think he was implying you lost your phone.
I thought I would say it before you did.
Thank you.
Just beat you to the punch.
Thank you.
There you go.
And again, it's always about giving lots and lots of grace. And so, because I expect that from you guys. So when I screw up, I need lots of grace as well. So I give lots of grace. But I'm not afraid to have the hard conversation that says, like, this just isn't working. This, whatever it is that we're doing, and it's maybe not you, maybe it's not me, maybe it's the system. And when the system doesn't work, it's hard to give grace.
Yeah.
So when
and I work in an environment where, another thought that I had was, if I don't go down there and I don't yell at him, if I don't handle this right now, there's going to be people that think I can't handle my job.
that you're
Because one other thing that I do not do is I never complain to higher up. I never say, oh, I don't have this to do my job, or I don't have that to do my job, or whatever it is. I never, because there's people that they'll go in the office and say, well, and they'll
make excuses.
Make excuses.
Those
complain.
are called below the line responses.
Right. And so I don't do that. So I thought, okay, my only option is I got to go down there and handle it, because maybe Holly can attest to this. When you're in a shop like that, of course, steel business, trucking business, it's pretty much like, don't be a crybaby.
Yeah.
That's kind of like the attitude.
World.
It's like, it's a man's world. Don't be a crybaby. Handle the situation. Don't come to me and cry about it. So if I don't go down there and I don't handle it, then there's going to be somebody that says, well, why didn't you go down there and yell at him?
Just
Why don't you,
handle it.
So again, that was another tough part of the situation. Was I kind of felt like I felt like I had expended all of my Christian character to that point, and the only other thing that was going to get it across was to go down there and
Philippians 2:3-4. So when we must deal with a difficult person, we approach the situation in meekness. Love is also key. Love your neighbor
As you love
as yourself. So that one's an important one. So when we're experiencing somebody who is difficult, if we're going to love them, sometimes that means we have to walk into that situation and fall on our sword. I said that to who was I talking to? I don't remember who I was talking to, but I said, hey, you're going to have to fall on your sword on this one. You're wrong. They're right. You're going to have to walk into that situation and say, listen, I know you were right and I was wrong. And I'm sorry for that. And I'm sorry for the way that I treated you because I thought I was right. That's not fun.
No, it's not.
But when we can learn to do that,
You grow.
you don't grow, they grow too.
Yeah, exactly.
They can say, okay, like that gap that we had can be filled with trust because we
Right.
can trust one another. I can believe that you're going to tell me when you were wrong and I will tell you when I was wrong. You were saying earlier that when you walk down there and you yell at somebody, it does, everybody knows that you can do your job at that point. All of those things happen. But it's harder for people to trust when they've made a mistake that you will understand. And I'm not saying what you did was wrong because we've all been there. Like you're talking about a situation where you've blown up, not like this isn't how you operate every day. So let's be very clear about that. But when you have a manager who yells 24/7, every time you walk into the room and they're there, somebody's getting in trouble, somebody's getting yelled at. At my last job, I was known as the executioner. It's not a joke. When I would show up on one of our hotel properties, people would start figuring out who's got to pack their bags, who's going home unemployed today. Because my boss had set that tone for me. I was always the one. I was always the guy that showed up. If I had my leather satchel with me, you knew somebody was leaving unemployed because all of the HR stuff was there. So it didn't feel good to be known that way because nobody wanted to talk to me. Like everybody was, if I say something
Keep
to
your
him,
head down.
Yep, head down, mouth shut, go hide in the laundry room, people crawling under beds.
Let me know when he's gone.
Yeah, because they knew if I was showing up, I knew they were there and I was looking to send somebody home. And that was never fun for me. So when you're known as that guy, it is hard for people to trust you whenever they need to make a decision. If something happens, they need to be able to tell you. And when you yell and you fire everybody and you throw stuff, nobody wants to tell you they've made a mistake.
Right.
Yeah.
And it makes trusting a lot harder. So when I deal with difficult people, I always walk into those situations very, very, when I walk through a room, it's like Cosmo Kramer coming through the front door. You know what I mean? Like I slide through, my hair bounces a little bit, and people are like, whoa. So when I know that I'm walking into a situation with somebody who is difficult, or even somebody who is maybe doesn't carry the same energy as me, I walk in with a different tone. Like, so I, again, as you talking about earlier with that guy who's always like at 115 degrees, I'm a thermostat. I set the temperature in a room when I walk in. It's just who I am. It's what I do. If I walk in at 115, if I come in the door and I'm slamming papers around, everybody's like, what is happening? But if I walk in there and I'm cool as a cucumber and I sit down and, hey, thanks for meeting with me or thanks for taking time, like it's a lot more relaxed. It's a lot easier to have that conversation. Even if it's not a good one, it's a lot easier to have that conversation. So that's just kind of the setting the temperature is an important part of dealing with difficult people.
Well, I know the difficult. Good morning, Bella. How this really started was, we all joke. Yeah. And I'm not a jokester.
Yeah, I know. They tell you really terrible jokes to share.
But they all joke and kid and, and I try to dive in, but, not a jokester. I'm too serious.
Yeah.
Is what it is.
Yeah.
I'm not laid back. I'm like uptight. And so it was a morning and I'm doing my work and he walks in and I'm like, hey, good morning. How are you? And he says something very foul to me. And I was like, oh my gosh. I mean, it's so like, I'm sure my hair blew back. it was like, whoa. And so later we were in the lobby together and I said to him, I said, it's very hard for me to joke with people. I said, it's very hard for me to say, let my hair down. I said, and I approached you very, very nicely this morning. And I said, you were so rude. And I said, I didn't appreciate it. And he just stood there. And I said, but we're good. I said, you and me, we're good. I said, but I would appreciate a little bit of respect.
And what's funny is that changes relationships, because when you hide from it or you don't, they're used to being able to say that to somebody
Right.
and nobody
No one's
calling
saying
them out.
anything back.
Like if I were to walk into a room and just start ranting and saying things that I shouldn't do at work, nobody would say anything to me because they're afraid to get in trouble for it. So, but when somebody's willing to say, "Hey, that's
It's not acceptable.
that's not cool,"
No one watches Virgin River, do they?
no, I don't even know what it is.
Well,
Holly?
I have a little bit.
Okay.
I don't even know what it is.
Well, this the doctor, he has this temper, and Mel has put him in his place, and now this new
Good job,
doctor,
Mel.
this new doctor has now done the same thing, but both times he's like, you know what, you're right, and then their relationships
It
change
changes things.
from then on out.
It changes things.
Yeah.
And not in a like, oh, well, I can't joke with Holly anymore.
Right.
It's I know my boundaries. And I think with difficult people or difficult situations, when you set boundaries, which again, that's the upfront contract for me. Here are the boundaries. That you get outside of this, you're going to feel that little shock. You know what I mean? Because we're going to have that conversation and you're not going to like it. Yeah. But don't say I didn't warn you.
Right.
This is what I need from you. This is how I want you to do that. But again, I'm not going to tell you how to get from point A to point B.
Yeah.
So when you set boundaries with people, when you walk into the room and you say, "Hey, what you said in there," I had this happen with me. I was in a meeting with a group of it was my operations team, myself, and another general manager from part of our company. And somebody said something that struck him wrong. And he flips his glasses off his face, both hands on the table, boardroom table. And he's like, "What do you mean?" And he got loud. I immediately stepped in and handled I was like, "Hey, listen, if we will do our best to make that happen. But for now, let's just put a pin in it and let's move on." So he was angry the rest of the meeting. When that meeting was over, he walked back to his cubicle. I gave him about 5 minutes and I walked in there and I said, "Hey, listen, I understand that you were frustrated. I don't speak to my team that way. You don't speak to my team that way. If it happens again, we will have a much larger problem."
Yeah.
It's never happened again. Because while he and I are on the same playing field, if I walk into the owner's office and say, "If that's how we treat people, I'm out,"
Yeah.
that ain't going to fly. That's not what we do. It's not the culture we have created. So you don't bring that into my house.
Right. Right.
Flat out. So it's like it would be equivalent to somebody coming in here on a Sunday morning and trying to preach while I'm preaching. That's not what we do here. Like, we love you and we want you to be able to be part of the family, but at the same time, you have to understand what your role is.
Yeah.
And everybody here has a gifting, and we want everybody to operate in those giftings. Right. But you don't just get to decide when you do it.
Yeah, for sure.
When we were talking about prayer last Sunday, one of the things I was thinking about is, there are so many people who feel like they should be praying for people, but they don't come to prayer on Thursday nights. And I've never understood that. I've never understood that. I feel called to lay hands on people. Where are you at on Thursday? And not that we are laying hands on people on Thursday, but this is an entry, Thursday night is entry level prayer as far as I'm concerned. We go in, what I mean is we're all quiet. You pray by yourself. Right. Then we pray together as a group. We wander around the building and pray around the building. And it's very relaxed. And so you can hear and learn from the other people in the room. It's a great opportunity to just be, if nothing else, an observer to what's happening whenever we're praying. And then they don't show up for prayer on Sunday mornings in the prayer room. And I'm like, but you want to lay hands on people? I just don't understand. And so when I said on Sunday, I don't allow people to pour into me that I don't know and or trust, that's the truth.
Yeah.
I was at work one day, and there's a girl that works with me. I've told you guys about her before. Her mom is a Pentecostal mom, real Pentecostal mom, crazy Pentecostal. And she came up to me and she said, "Hey, so-and-so just they stopped me and they put their hand on me and they prayed for me." She's like, "I didn't like it." I said, "Okay, well, we're going to pray that whatever it is that they said is dead if it wasn't it wasn't of God." I said, "We are not going to allow that to happen." That's the kind of stuff that we have to be aware of. And so when we're dealing with difficult people in the workplace, we have to be willing to pray for them as well. I know that's a cliche answer, but it's the best answer. Right? When you have somebody difficult, obscene guy, I'm going to pray for his discernment. I'm going to pray that whenever he sees me, he sees God in me, and he doesn't want to say that to me.
Right.
See, I actually had to pray that because at the lunch table, oh my goodness, it was so foul. I can't.
But I'm not trying to defend them. It's a room full of men. They're truckers. They tend to be foul-mouthed anyway. But it's not an excuse to do that. You wouldn't walk into a hair salon where there are a bunch of ladies and talk that way.
Right.
So why would you do it
Well,
here?
and how long has Holly been there?
Well,
you know,
and if you can turn it off, what I'm saying is if you can turn it off whenever you're around your wife, certainly you can turn it off when
Exactly.
Holly's around.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Well,
but a lot of them don't.
That's true.
But I just had to. I just said, God, let me be a pillar.
Yes.
You know, let my light shine.
Yep.
And bring conviction.
Yep.
That they're talking like this. The other day, they were just going at it, and one of the truck drivers is like, "Oh, I forgot Holly's in here. I'm so embarrassed."
But there you go.
And the other guy's like, "It's okay. She's not listening." I said, "You think?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'm listening."
Yeah. Even if I'm not listening, I can hear it.
Right.
I'm not listening to respond. I'm not listening
Yeah.
to be engaged. But if I can hear it,
Yeah.
I've always had this theory. Would I want you to say that around my wife?
Right.
Like, so if Roger and I were sitting here and we were saying things that weren't inappropriate, and I thought to myself, would I want Roger to say that in front of my wife? If the answer is no,
Right.
I probably don't want Roger saying it at all.
Right.
And I probably
Yeah.
don't want to be
Yeah.
involved in that conversation, right? Like, I have a daughter.
Mm-hmm.
She's little. Do I want my daughter hearing those things?
Yeah.
Right.
Nope.
No.
And so then why would I be involved in a conversation
Yeah.
with somebody who's saying those things?
Especially when you can say something like, "Hey, man, that's not cool." You know?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Like-
Well, would you be okay if I said that to your daughter? You say that to one of those
Exactly,
guys and
exactly.
they're like,
Or, "Hey,
Yeah.
what if your daughter was sitting right beside you?"
Yep. But the problem is some of them don't care if they say it in front of their kids.
Yeah.
But they would be upset if somebody else did.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah.
So, not only talking about people in the workplace, but family.
Oh, those ones
Sometimes-
you just throat punch.
Oh, okay.
Problem solved.
Well, we can go now.
Yeah. That was an easy one. What's next?
Check.
Check that box off.
Yeah,
Elaborate,
family
Nick.
is never easy.
No.
You know, there's a lot of different relationships within a family, and you have to confront a lot of different circumstances and problems, situations where, it's tough sometimes. And how do you deal with family in those situations? Is it any different than dealing with them in the workplace or other relationships that you have?
Oh my gosh, you got to look at them through the lens of love.
Well, and that is where you trust more than anywhere else. I learned just very recently, my grandma would come into church and she would say things to me about family members like, "Hey, so-and-so did this or so-and-so did that." And I'm like, "Yeah, that won't last." And like the words came out of my mouth to her. Now, I didn't know when I was saying those things that breaks her heart.
Right.
Like, she
probably
loves
'cause those
those people.
exactly.
She loves those people.
Yes.
Like, I may not be close with them,
But she
but
is.
she loves those people. And so to like put it into perspective, my grandma is kind of the glue that
Well, I
holds
was
that
going to
side
say
of the family
grandmas.
together.
Grandmas are the glue.
Right.
Yeah.
So something happens to grandma, that whole side of the family just crumbles. Like, I don't see any. We grew up as cousins at grandma's house every weekend.
Yeah.
Like, we took turns who was going to be allowed to stay at her house, but we were always together.
Yeah.
And now we don't see or really speak to one another very often. But there's still a certain amount of respect for one another. You know, like my brother, my sister, my cousin Brooke, my cousin Allison, cousin Will, Zach, Jordan, like all of them. We were all very close. We're not anymore, but
Yeah.
I still, when I see them, I speak to them. They live a different life than I live. So we're not all the same.
Yeah.
Like, some of them like to party and some of them we just don't have a lot
Yeah.
of things in common. But when I say things to my grandma about those people in general, it really does hurt her heart. But I don't think about that.
right.
Right?
Yeah.
So I got a big old piece of humble pie a couple of Sundays ago. She said something to me and I'm like, that's a lie. Like, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. That isn't even possible. Like, it's physically impossible. So about 4 days later, I find out that it was freaking possible and it was happening. And I was like, what? So the following Sunday, when I saw my grandma, I said, "Hey, before you leave, I want to talk to you in my office." So she popped in and she's like, "Hey, what's up?" And I said, "I want to apologize to you." I said, "I told you it wasn't possible, and it was 100% possible." I said, "I didn't believe you. I didn't trust that it was true, and I should have." And she was like, "Oh, it's fine." Like, she forgave me that quickly.
Right.
I mean, mainly because I'm her favorite. Like, let's make sure that that's clear.
Sure.
Yeah, I tell myself that. We all know it's not true. My cousin Brooke is her favorite, and then I think my sister is second. Maybe Allison is second. But anyhow, I fall in the top 5, I think. Okay. So
Out of 5?
Of 5. No. I think I fall in the top 5. So I'm okay with that. She brings me shepherd's pie. That's in my world.
Yeah, that's the reason she brought it to you Sunday.
Yeah, maybe. In my world, that puts me in the top 5. But I have to realize with family, I have to be able to trust what it is that they tell me more than most other people because they have no reason to lie.
Yeah.
Or
they have a deeper connection than you do.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. So that's been a hard one for me.
Yeah.
It is a lot. It's very similar, but I think there are some of them that you have to turn up and then some of them that you have to turn back.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what I mean? Like, the discernment with my family, I don't really have to turn that up because most of them I know well enough to know I don't need that same level of discernment.
Yeah.
But the trust, I have to be able to turn that way up.
Mm-hmm.
That dial has to be at a 10 because otherwise, if I don't trust them, I've got nothing.
Yeah.
So
I recently just had an incident with my new son-in-law. And so he's so telling me all about all this. And whole time he's talking, I'm like, am I going to engage? Am I going to let this fly?
yeah.
How am I going to roll?
Throat punch.
And so he just goes on and on and on. When he gets done, Dave looks at me and I look at him and I said, you know what? Spaghetti broken spaghetti. Oh, it's still spaghetti. I said, we are going to agree to disagree.
Yeah.
And Dave's like, I'm proud of you.
It is not easy to do that.
No.
But I will tell you, this is, and again, it's my wife and I specialty. It's what we do best.
Mm-hmm.
We agree to disagree a lot. Now, we have come a long way, but both of us have come to the middle on
Right.
so much,
Yeah.
so much.
But the thing is people choose not to even try to
They don't want to.
make it to the middle.
Well, I think there's a small difference there too.
Uh-huh.
The fact that we're married.
oh, yeah.
Like we're
So
a
you kind of-
Christian family. We're married.
Right.
We're not gonna divorce because my wife likes that and I
Yeah.
like this.
Yeah.
There are people though who like you work with somebody and you say, you know what? The best sandwich in the world is a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, and they're like, jelly is disgusting. The best sandwich is
Peanut butter and onion.
peanut butter and onion. Okay,
Peanut butter-
and tomato.
okay.
Peanut butter and salami.
Let's stop because I'm starting to judge all of you.
Peanut butter and
I didn't think it could
bologna.
get worse than peanut butter and jelly, but you,
It did real fast.
Oh.
This right here got super weird.
You've never had a peanut butter and onion
No.
sandwich?
Never.
Okay.
I thought it was weird when I heard people ate peanut butter sandwiches with chili.
Oh, that is good.
That
Like,
is
what?
weird. Right.
I like it with
But I guess it's a
spaghetti
big
too.
thing.
Oh, it's so good.
Okay, Linda
What part did you
Deerdorf
from?
drinks chocolate milk with her spaghetti. I don't get it. I took her to an Italian restaurant one time. Her and I drove to Cleveland to pick up a rocking chair for my house. I desperately wanted this hand-woven hickory rocker, and I wanted somebody to go with me. She got in the car, went with me, drove
You
an
did.
hour. What?
You did
What?
one of the rockers.
Yes. Yes. So I drove, I got the rocker, and on our way back, I'm like, hey, I've got a really good friend who owns this restaurant, and it's an Italian restaurant. Her husband is Italian, straight from Italy. Like, we're going to stop and get dinner. And so she orders spaghetti and a chocolate milk, and I immediately start judging her. I was like, what is this garbage?
Now, I like chocolate milk with an egg sandwich. That's really tasty.
I can always tell when
That'd be
we
all
are
right,
having
I think.
spaghetti.
Yeah, because she gets chocolate
Yeah,
milk.
because she'll say, I'll call her and she'll say, well, stop and get a chocolate milk.
weird.
Are we having spaghetti tonight? Yeah.
Weird.
Okay.
That's so funny.
Weird. What were we talking about?
Peanut butter and jelly.
Yeah. So you immediately start to argue about what the best sandwich is, and they can't stand that you might be right,
Yeah.
even if it's just your opinion.
Yeah.
They can't handle that. And so we don't even, like, I'm going to just hate you at work, and we're just going to live miserable lives, right?
Yep,
Yeah.
yep.
We can't agree to disagree on that. And it's small stuff. It's little stuff.
yeah.
I get one of the bad raps that I get at work is I don't like to spend money on stuff. Like, I'm like, I mean, that's how I make my
Unless
money.
it's Elvis.
All for the workplace.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like I get
makes
profit
sense.
sharing. So if we spend $1,000, that's cutting into my money. Do you know what I mean? And so I look at that. That goes into every decision that I make. And so when we're talking about, well, let's replace a water heater instead of replace the thermocoupler, because this tank's 8 years old and it's just about due. Well, that might be so, but it might last another 8. I don't know. That thermocoupler's $30. A new hot water tank's $1,000. Let's put the thermocoupler. Well. So I get now we're just going to do the job twice because we're going to put thermocoupler in, it's going to go bad again, and then we're going to have to replace the hot water tank. Yep, maybe so.
Yeah.
Maybe so. And so I get that bad rap a lot, but it's my job to make those decisions.
Yeah.
Not theirs. Yeah. And so I am okay with sometimes having to be the bad guy because of the decisions that I make, but I will never do that just to make a bad decision.
Right.
So, but some people think that about me. They think, well, he's just doing that to be difficult.
Yeah.
He's just doing that to make things harder on everybody else. No, listen, the less you call me, the easier my life becomes.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Seriously, yeah.
It's just never that way. So,
What about enabling? When we enable our loved ones to continue on a lifestyle that we know is not best for them, might even be best for you if you're on the receiving end of your own enablement.
walk that out. Explain that. I don't know what you
mean.
Give me an example.
I feel like there's a lot of grandparents that are raising their grandkids.
Ooh, knew that's where he was going.
There are a lot of, grown men or women that are still living with their parents, and maybe they don't have a job. They're not contributing to society in any way. Maybe they have, drug issues or
because they're afraid
certain things. So
they're afraid if they say something, that relationship's going to be done.
Yep.
And that should not be the case.
That's called manipulation. It's true.
Well, if you do that, Mom,
yes.
well then
I'm not going to talk
come
to
back.
you.
Yeah.
Well,
okay. So this is, and my parents love my parents to death. And again, if I were to ever separate from my wife, I would not have a family anymore, and she would have my family. She gets them in the divorce. That's how that works. And we have never done this, but it would be super easy for us to say to my dad, well, if you don't do that, then you don't get to see the grandkids this weekend.
Yeah, but that's not right.
Whatever it is that I said, trust me, he's going to do it because he is not going to risk that time with his grandkids.
Right.
And that's not fair, but people do that.
They hang it over their shoulders.
So when we talk about enabling, I think there's a difference in the conversation. I think enabling is, I want to just share my heart for a second. I have always believed that drug addiction is a choice and not an addiction. Okay? But my opinion of that has changed slightly. I can see how once you've started, it's hard to stop. It's no different than smoking or drinking, things like that, right?
Yeah.
It's still a choice at some point, but it's also it's hard to quit. You have to make that decision. It is a choice to quit, but it is a much harder choice than a lot of us will ever recognize because we've never lived it.
And just to say, your opinion has changed because you decided to educate yourself on these
Correct.
things. Yes.
Exactly.
Okay.
My opinion has changed because, this is one of the things that my wife and I agreed to disagree on for years. And she finally said to me, okay, but you're being ignorant because you don't want to listen to this. And so I'm like, okay, I guess she could point it back to my life. When you smoked, that was a choice. I said, yes. And she said, so why didn't you quit when you said you were going to quit? Well, because I couldn't. It was a lot harder than that.
Right.
She goes, okay, so how is this any different?
Right.
All right, I hate you. So this is why I want a divorce. No, just kidding.
So it's an addiction.
To some degree, but I think that you have to make the choice to stop. It's hard.
Oh, definitely.
Right.
Yeah,
It's hard to make that and commit to it and follow through, just like with smoking and things like that. So
When I quit smoking, I gained 60 pounds
that's what I'm saying. It's not easy to
because
do.
I lived on crackers and milk.
But what I'm saying is that I think the enabling part comes when we just say, well, they're addicted and they can't get better. They can.
Yeah.
We can help them get better, but by feeding them cash or do you know what I mean? Allowing them to live in your basement and do drugs in your house and to sell crack out of the attic. That's enabling.
Them.
You're hurting them. You're not helping them. And that's where I think the difference is. But I also, again, I can recognize how hard that is.
Yeah.
If I'll tell you this.
Well, I can see, a lot of parents being like, if I kick them out, if I do it,
They're dead in a week.
Then they're not going to love me or they're going to be dead in a week.
Yeah.
Or I'm
This is
no
a
longer
safe
a good
place for
parent.
them.
Even if they're 35, 40 years old,
Yep.
well, I'm no longer a good parent.
Yeah.
So again, you start thinking like,
So
how do you be a good
Delusional.
Christian?
Mhm.
How do you be a good Christian and put your foot down to somebody you truly love and say, this isn't working anymore. You're going to have to change.
Tough love.
I walked through
Yeah.
it. I walked through it, but I was on the enabled side. So my mom was enabling me. This is embarrassing to a certain degree. When I was buying Pokemon cards, I was buying them by the case. Like, Sid can attest to this.
Chase is like, I can't even imagine. Like
The hobby box, huh?
This is terrible. So Sid went to, they found them.
Oh.
They found them in a GameStop somewhere, and I was like, buy
Yeah.
everything they've got and bring it to me. I need my fix, right? Okay, serious. This is no joke. So they show up at my house.
we showed up like a little drug.
It was like a
hop.
drug deal. I hand them cash. They hand me the Pokemon, and I'm like, I've got my fix. The itch is scratched for 20 minutes. But you tear through those boxes so fast.
And
like
then you get nothing?
Then you got nothing.
Yeah.
The itch is back. It's bad. But so my mom would go, like, if she would be at the store and she would find them, she'd send me a picture and be like, hey, do you want these? And then she would buy them, and I didn't have to pay for them. Well, that's like buying me drugs. Like, that's like buying me crack.
Yeah.
Seriously.
I was over at Dollar Market the other day, and I'm standing in line, and there's a box of Pokemon. And I thought,
We went
Well,
to
we were
hasn't
over
been
at
here.
we were over at McDonald's.
Oh, don't. I
And
can't.
they got, what is it? The
The-
Pokemon
They've got Pokemon-
Master. What is it right now?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I looked over, I'm like, I wonder if Michael knows that.
Yeah, I do.
Well,
What's going on
Chase
right now?
said he was like the new thing came out, the 101s or 151s.
151 comes out in 2 days.
Oh, well.
Oh, yeah, he's got down to the
Well,
day.
Yeah.
he said, "Well, I can't even believe I haven't pre-ordered anything, nothing like that." So when I'm at Costco, and I have heard him say Costco has good deals with
Yes,
Pokemon,
they do.
And I come back and he's like, "Did you check Pokemon?" I'm like, "Yeah, but they were just like those Pokeballs."
Pokeballs.
And he's like, "I said, but you don't even like Pokeballs." And he's like, "Yeah, but if they're a good deal."
But there are okay. Thank you. So that's the addiction part that I'm talking
I'm
about.
like, "Oh my gosh!"
That's the dopamine kick. Like, I can justify anything as a good deal.
yes.
I could have a pile of poo in my hand, and for the right price, it's a good deal, and I have to buy it. Like, it's crazy how that works. And okay, so like mine is on a like just something I'm going to open. I can't imagine something you're putting into your body, and your body feels some euphoria from
Right,
that,
right.
right? Okay, that's got to be
Yeah.
wild.
Yeah.
Wild.
Yeah.
The difference in that. Okay. So my mom would buy those for me, didn't cost me a dime. I would open them, tear through them, not get anything. And she'd be like, well, at least you had fun, right? No. So finally, the way that I had to fix it, I said to my mom, I don't need you to buy me anymore. Like, I'm good. I wasn't good. I wasn't good. That was probably at the peak of my worst, but I knew that if I didn't stop, I was going to be in trouble. Now I'm gonna share a really this is a super brutal story, and this is this is my wife dealing with a difficult person. Hi, that's me. There was a Pokemon card that was kind of the crown jewel of every Pokemon card collection. Okay, it was called a Moon Kitty. Okay, so it was an Umbreon. It was a special card. It was from an Evolving Skies series. It was impossible to find.
That's why he was getting all these boxes.
Correct, because I
Okay.
desperately
to get the
wanted
Moon
to find
Kitty.
that card, and that was like a 1 in a million chance that I was ever going to find
Chase
it.
was like, he could just get on eBay and buy it.
Well, the unfortunate part is I did exactly that. Now listen, hear this. I spent $700 on a single Pokemon card.
I think you need to go on a fast.
Okay. No, I have given it up since then. I haven't bought another Pokemon card since then. Okay. So the problem was, in my mind, I was going to be able to hide this from my wife forever.
Till she got the...
No, she got onto eBay to look for something for herself, and she saw it. And I remember the text. It said, we need to talk. And I knew exactly what it was. As soon as I got the text, I knew exactly what it was. And I knew when I did it, when I finished doing it, that it was wrong. And that's when I realized I had a freaking problem. Okay? So my wife, I call her, and I knew.
Hi, honey.
And I was like, hey, babe, what's up? And she's crying on the phone. She's so mad at me. And I'm like, is this worth my marriage?
Exactly. Yeah.
Is this worth my marriage? I am being a difficult person right now. I am allowing people to enable me because everywhere, I would go to Walmart 3 times a week while I was at work and hope that I could get Pokemon cards. Okay. So when I realized I had a problem, I was like, all right, I'm going to sell the card. It's the only, it doesn't make it right. It doesn't make it better, but I'll sell the card and at least then it'll be.
First step.
When it came, my wife kept it. And she said, I don't know yet if I'm going to let your daughter draw on it,
Oh my.
if I'm going to burn it, or if I'm going to make you sell it. Now, I knew she wasn't going to burn it, and I knew she wasn't going to let my daughter sell or color on it because I got to pay off that credit card, right?
Right.
I relisted on eBay, and it sells for $350.
Ouch. Ouch.
And she said, have you learned your lesson?
Yeah.
As I sat there and sobbed as I packaged it up to send it off to some guy in Indonesia or wherever he was. It was the hardest thing that I had ever gone through. But what I said was this. My wife dealt with me in one of my most difficult times. Like, to me, that's worse than smoking
Right.
because it was a lot more expensive than smoking would have ever been. And she put up with that. And I don't mean put up with it like passively. We actively talked about it. But what she said to me finally was that when she had gone to therapy and she had told her therapist about it, her therapist said, it's classic addiction. And I was like, I'm not living that life.
Yeah.
But that, again, was one of those moments where it was an eye-opener that addiction
Yeah, you're like, that. No, that's
comes
not
in
me.
all
Yeah.
shapes and sizes.
That's right.
It's wild to me to think that there are people who are addicted to pornography. There are people who are addicted to their cell phones. There are
Yeah.
people who are addicted to people,
Food, people.
the food. Like, there are some people who are so codependent that they can't be alone. That's not healthy either.
Our society is so based
Right.
on it.
Right.
Yeah, yeah.
And so it's just kind of come to this place where we have to. The addiction that a drug addict has is equally as bad as the one that I've got. I probably spent more on mine than
Right.
most of the drug
Right.
addicts do.
So do you think that's a lack of self-control?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
And now here's the crazy part. It has, I guess maybe that was the valley because the mountaintop, I don't even
Think about it.
I mean, not that specifically, but in general, I don't think about it. Like, Alyssa and I have been talking about buying electric scooters. And so, when I get hyper fixated on, I'm going to shop for electric scooters until I find the best deal, and she absolutely can't say no. And I do that for a couple of days. But, the other night, I sat down at the computer, and when I sat down, I was talking about this on church on Sunday about a pair of shoes that I wanted. When I sat down in front of that computer, I was hyper fixated on it. I said to myself, but do you really need them? Right. And I was able to walk myself out of it. I haven't thought about those shoes until right this minute. But you have to get there.
Right. Yeah.
And so dealing with difficult people is a lot of that same process. You have to understand that they are difficult people. And if you try to treat them like you treat everybody else, if you try to walk into a room with that trucker every morning and just say good morning to him and you don't change how you deal with it, it's never going to get better.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
You have to make some of those changes. Again, it doesn't mean you have to be passive. You can be direct without being mean.
Right.
It's hard. It's hard. I hope my wife doesn't listen to this podcast.
At my house, they call it the tone.
Yes. Yes. And here, you know what's funny?
You heard it Sunday morning. The tone.
Did I hear it Sunday morning?
I said, Dave.
Oh, yes, you're right. I did hear the tone. I did. You did? I did. We were sitting in the cafe, and it was me, Holly, Roger, and you were in there for that, right?
Yeah.
And Dave. And Holly just speaks his name in such a way that Dave goes, yeah, you're right. I'm sorry. You just know. But it's kind of like that mix of mom and wife voice.
Yeah.
But if you said Remington, I bet he would do the exact same thing. He knows. He knows. Where were we at? We were somewhere, and I heard a dad yell a kid's name. And I joked. I turned around and I said to him, it's not what you said. They heard the voice that said it, and they know, game over. It changes.
Yeah.
Alyssa said she was at co-op, and there was a little boy there, and he was just he threw a ball right at his mom's face, and then she had bent over and he went up and smacked her right on the bottom. And when he did that, she turned around and snatched him up by the front of his shirt, and she laid into him quietly. But and she said that boy was an angel the rest of the day. He just needed to know mom is still there.
Right.
That mom is still inside. While she is going to be reserved and probably not choke me in front of these people, she's
Just wait till we get home.
yeah. And so I think dealing with difficult people, it's an important part of it is knowing, okay, there is a boundary, there is a line, and I have to know when I can step to it and when I need to stay 3 steps behind it.
Yep.
I have to stay 3 steps behind it at all times at work. And that's hard. And I have to because my parents work for me.
Yeah.
So if I go to a housekeeper and I say, hey, you've done this and that's unacceptable. Well, your mom or well, your dad. So I have to stay 3 steps behind that line at all times. Everything has to be firm, fair, and friendly.
That's right.
But my parents will tell you, I expect more out of them than I do anybody else.
Yeah.
Like the bar is higher for them than it is for everybody else, which isn't fair to them, but they knew that when they signed up.
Yeah.
So anybody else have any fun, interesting points? Roger's shaking his head no. Ba-deep. That's all, folks.
We think alike. I was just gonna say that.
Yeah, well, they say great minds think alike. Sometimes I think it's more like crazy minds think alike.
Yeah, well, yeah, I'll go with that.
Yeah, crazy minds think alike. But hey, if we're not crazy, we're not fun. So
That's right.
that's one thing I like. One thing I can say about us, we are a fun bunch. Well, hey, Sid, why don't you pray for us tonight?
Okay. All right. Dear Heavenly Father, I just thank you for this night that we've had of fellowship, Lord. I thank you that we can still, come and provide all this conversation to not just our community, but anywhere around the world. Help us to, like Nick said, just kind of before we start overreacting, kind of put us back in our place and just let our light shine through, of you, Lord. I pray for safe travels. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.
Amen.
Amen.